Welcome to this week's edition of Coach Prep. Coach Don and I are working Zoom again. We've got a really fun topic for you. It was recommended by our producer, Stan Lewis. Stan wants us to talk about the technique of getting back to the bases after we take a lead off and why that's an important thing that sometimes doesn't get coached or doesn't get practiced enough. So before we get into that, though, let's talk about patreon.com. I want to say thank you very much to Richard Morton. Richard is our newest patron. We're really excited that he's come on board and is going to be supporting our podcast. We'd like more people to do the same. Follow Richard's lead. Go to patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. It's $5, $10, or $20 a month. And the reality of our situation is we definitely need some more patrons to come on board, and we would love to see some more people do that. So go to patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. If you see value in what we're doing, if you want us to be able to keep doing it, please become a patron. So Don, the idea of base running is something that we've talked about a lot. But a very specific piece of that I think is important and something that I don't think gets practiced enough is after you've taken your lead off, being in a position to either advance to the next base or in some cases get back to the base you just let off very effectively. And I think that sometimes the circumstances of games and situations will get players that don't value their ability to be able to react, whether to advance on a ball in the dirt or a ball that gets by the catcher, but even more so that they're not ready to get back quickly in a pickoff situation. And one of the things that I've seen changing a lot over the last 4, 5, 6 years, especially at the higher levels, are teams that have some really slick pickoff kinds of plays and things that that are really deceiving and working pretty often. But I think it's partly because they're doing something really well as a defense in running specific kinds of pickoff plays, but also because they're tapping into whether it's carelessness or lack of preparation on base runners who kind of just wander off the base and don't really know what they're doing when they get there and exactly what they think they're going to do if something big does happen.
No, I think that's important for sure, Tori. And there's a lot of little, like you said, pickoff plays. And when we're on the base pass, we've got to be conscious of what's going on around us. Even silly things like running through first base and turning towards the field opens things up to possibly being tagged out. And we've had times when our opponents have had arguments with the umpires, and then the very next inning, their players running through first base and turns back towards the field, and they were clearly safe, but we'll turn around and tag them on the hip, and the umpire will call them out because they made a slight little twitch or move towards the infield, which means that they're live game again, rather than turning towards foul territory and just going back to the bag because they were safe. So a lot of little things can be very game changing in tight situations like that. Getting back to the bag, to me, when we're breaking off of each pitch, off the bags, if we're getting a really good jump, we're far enough off that we're very potentially going to struggle getting back on a throw behind, just right, on a ball at the plate, throw behind at the base, if we're getting a really big jump. So for me, being able to get back comfortably in the event that nothing happens at the plate is super important. But we also too don't want to be so late getting off the base that we're out by a half a step at second base if we're at first on an easy ground ball. We want to make that play at second tough. So there's a little bit of a balance there. But knowing, if you're sliding to the backside of the base, are we head first diving, back to the base, or are we a pitcher that doesn't want to get a finger jammed, so we're not going to be as aggressive, on those leads so that we don't have to be diving back. All those things have to come into play, but to give the kids the knowledge and the option of what's happening around you. Are we in a real tight game where we definitely can't get picked off, or are we early in the game and wanting to break the game loose a little bit by being more aggressive and forcing some errors or creating an opportunity to make a difficult double play happen if we get a ground ball in the infield? All those things I think are factors, but talking and practicing it like we're doing right now, just chatting through it, I think is part of the coaching magic that each of our listeners probably want to create.
We used to do a drill. I'm going to try to explain this And this is one of those things that it'd be great if we had a video of a team doing this, but try to talk our way through it so the coaches can add this to their routine. We called it the complete base running drill. But what we would do is either I would simulate pitching or we would have a pitcher and a catcher, depending upon the times and places that we were doing it. And we would put all our players at each base. So we'd have a line of kids at third, line of kids at second, line of kids at first. And in each situation, we would start off practicing the specific things that we were trying to get done in leadoffs and then returns if we needed to get back quickly. So it would start off that at each base, the base runner's job was first off to picture that they were leading, that they were the only base runner. So they were on third base and there was nobody else on base and there was nobody out. So what their leadoff would be in that situation, so that it's not a leadoff with a force runner behind you, but it's just you practicing the specific leadoff for that situation at that base. So at third base, when the pitcher would pitch, they'd be working on timing their leadoff. They'd be working on getting off the base right on time, but taking a leadoff at third base that was appropriate for third base with nobody out. At second base, the appropriate lead for at second base with no other base runners, and at first base. And so we'd go through a couple of times with each group at each base and then rotate them around to all three bases. So they'd work on the appropriate leadoff for third, the appropriate leadoff for second, the appropriate leadoff for first, because all of them are different. And when we would do that, we would work on the timing to make sure that we were getting a good aggressive leadoff, but also getting your body into a position where you would be ready to react to whatever happened. So we'd start off with just the regular leadoff. Then we would add in situations where the ball would get away. So it would be a ball in the dirt. And then what would your reaction be? Then it would be a situation with a potential pickoff. So you take your leadoff at third, and one of us as coaches would yell back. And then you'd have to get back to third. Like there's a pickoff play. They're the only base runner on base. That catcher's shocked you, surprised you, popped up, and she's making that snap throw to third or second or whatever the base might be. So that we would incorporate aggressive leadoffs, getting your body squared up so you were in a position to go in one direction or in either direction, and then also reacting quickly, either reacting quickly to advance because the ball was in the dirt, or react quickly to get back to the base because there was a leadoff. And then we would, again, like I said, circulate around the bases. Then we would also add in the 2-ball version of that, where we'd have a coach at the plate, and that coach would then simultaneously toss a ball up and try to hit it as the ball was passing home plate. So the same base runners could now work on, if it was a ground ball, how they would react. If it was a line drive, how they would react. If it was a fly ball, how they would react. And the reason I liked the complete base running drill was in about 15 or 20 minutes, we could work our way around. Every person on our team would get 5 or 6 opportunities to do the right thing at each base. So they got a chance to practice all the different circumstances they might be in without spending tons and tons of time watching one person. And obviously, as coaches, we would be giving pointers. Sometimes we would set up a video and video across the infield so we could see what was happening at first and third on the same frame. So we could come back with players and watch it and review of, well, you can see here that your leadoff's a little bit late. You can see here that your body's not squared away. You can't really go in both directions and that kind of thing. But so complete base running to me was a really good tool because we could get a lot of practice. And the one thing that was really helpful is it allowed our players in a less risky environment to work on diving back when they needed to get back to the base in a hurry. And so, nowadays we've got all these different sliding tools. I call them the oven mitts that you see base runners wearing that kind of protect their hands if they do slide head first. And I think something like that's a really good idea, especially if you've got an aggressive base runner that's going to be in situations where there's going to be more throw behinds and things like that. But practicing it, coaches, has got to be something that we're going to do more of. And again, I think that complete base running drill that I tried to describe is a great way for you to accomplish all of this, because then you can build in, straight steals. You can do all kinds of different things with it to help your players work on the specifics of being a complete base runner. So to me, that's a really good tool that I would recommend coaches incorporate into what you're doing in practice. But if we're not practicing these skills, if we don't help our players be really comfortable being aggressive in their leadoffs and know that they can get back, either we're not aggressive enough in our leadoff, so we're not, as you talk about all the time, Don, we're out by a half a step at second base instead of being safe, or we're getting picked off by a body length because we're not in control of our body enough or able to change directions quickly enough to get back when we need to.
Tori, I love that drill and the idea of getting a lot of reps for sure, because reps are how kids develop that reactionary skill. And that's where they get that skill set to make sure that they're optimizing whatever their potential is, because they are all different and some are a lot more of a base stealing threat than the others. And they need to, have a chance to work on their timing, seeing the pitcher release and getting that break, like you said. And when you are doing all these things, as you mentioned earlier, we have a little bit different angle if we're starting at second base. We might be a little bit deeper. When we're at third base, we want to get our lead in foul territory. And do we want them coming back in fair territory to, have a throw possibly hit our helmet or hit us? Or do we want them coming back in foul territory? You can, to avoid any contact there. So, and to maybe avoid the throw easier, but we can talk about all those little details that our coaching philosophy might incorporate. And then we can hopefully have on game day a lot better reactions with our group and our team.
Part of the reason I think Stan thought this was a useful topic was it's one of those things I think we just get caught undervaluing. And like I said, base running is something that we've talked about plenty of times. We know how important it is. It can be the difference between winning and losing more often than you want to admit. But then being able to break down certain aspects of it and work on specific things that need to be worked on, I think is really, really important and very valuable. And so to me, I think being able to do that is an important thing. And so we got to build that into our practice plan. And as you said, Don, something that I didn't touch on, some of the specifics about how to get back if you're at first or third, or what your coaching strategy is going to be. Perfect example, getting back to third. The old school was go out in foul territory, come back in fair territory so you get in the way of the throw. Well, then over time, it started to be more of go out in foul territory, come back further in foul territory to get as far away from the fielder as you could. And so, you can have whatever philosophy you want, but developing that and practicing it with your team enough that they're going to be able to do it in that split second when the game's on the line, when that really good team's trying to run a pickoff play, to make sure that you don't get picked off and kill a rally or get doubled off on a line drive or not be safe stealing a base because your leadoff is a little bit slow. Whatever it might be, the complete base running drill is a great way to work on it. And Stan's point, practicing getting back quickly and having it be instinctive and comfortable versus scared and nervous, I think is a really valuable thing.
Well, and too, Tori, all these little details we've got to cover as coaches, or we can't expect it just to happen on game day, right? So, and it's hard to cover all these things, but we need to build some time in. And, as you said, you can get a lot done in 10 or 15 minutes if you're able to do this on a regular basis. And then our expectations on game day can be a little bit higher.
Well, and to me, the making it less robotic and less mechanical and being able to have the players react much more naturally is always going to be beneficial. And so practicing this stuff is a really important part of that. So we really do appreciate Stan suggesting this as a topic. Want to make sure that we're talking about stuff that you're interested in, folks. So send us those questions, comments, ideas, suggestions, and definitely player of the week nominations for the Everything Fast Pitch podcast to either one of our email addresses. It's everythingfastpitch@gmail.com or fastpitchprep@gmail.com. Either one of those will work because we want to talk about stuff that you're interested in. And I know people that listen to Everything Fast Pitch know that we've been on a pretty good stretch now for probably the last 4 or 5 episodes where at least 3/4 of our topics have been stuff that's been suggested by listeners. And we love being able to do that because things that are interesting to you are things that we're interested in talking about. So please make sure you send us those emails with your suggestions. So that's going to wrap up this week's edition of Coach Prep. Please make sure you become a patron. Go to patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. Order your Square Cuts training discs at the fastpitchprep.com website. You also have access to the YouTube channel and the blog posts. There's tons of information for you coaches on our fastpitchprep.com website. I promise you could come up with 25 new practice drills just by looking through our YouTube channel, and you can have a whole bunch of stuff to be thinking about strategically if you look back through some of the blog posts. So we want to make sure that you take advantage of that information. So for Coach Don McKinley and our producer Stan Lewis, this is Coach Torrey saying thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again next week.